A man called Akpan, who was a native of Abosi, a town in the Ibibio country, admired a girl called Emem very much. Emem lived in a town in the Ibibio country. Akpan wished to marry Emem as she was the finest girl amongst her pair back then. It was the custom in those days for the parent of the girl whose daughter was to be married to demand for a large amount for their daughter as dowry. After that is done and those daughters are married out, if for any reason they fail to get along with their husbands and the need arises to get out of the marriage, they must redeem themselves with an equally huge amount of money, and if they cannot, they are sold out as slaves. Pan paid a very large sum as dowry to Emem's uncle, Udo. Emem's father died years ago and she, her siblings and mother had to depend on Udo for survival. The Ibibio culture is such that it demands that a wife should be put in a fattening room after dowry has been paid until it is time for her to be handed over to her husband. After Akpan paid the sum demanded for Emem's bride price, he told Emem's uncle and Emem's mother that when their daughter Emem was ready for marriage they must send her over to him as custom demands. Udo and Emem's mother agreed. Udo was a very rich man. After 7 years had elapsed and it was time for Emem to come out of the fattening room for grooming, and being taken to her husband's house, Udo, seeing that Emem has become enchantingly more beautiful than before, decided out of greed that instead of him to hand over Emem to her husband as agreed, he would sell her as a slave to another wealthy man named Ibibio, a rich man in a faraway community of Utam. Ibibio agreed and bought Emem over as a slave and handed her over to his daughter to serve her. When it was time for Emem to go to her master's house, Emem's little sister, who was wanted to go with her, went to their poor widowed mother to beg her to please allow her to follow her elder sister to where she is serving as a slave. Emem's mother agreed. The day arrived for them to embark on their journey. They started off together early one morning. For the journey, the slave girl carried a large bundle containing clothes and presents for Ibibio's daughter. Ibibio's daughter's house was a whole day's walk from where they lived. As they arrived at the outskirt of Banaga where Ibibio's daughter lived, there, in front of them, was a spring, where the people in the community got their drinking water from, but no one dared to bath in the water. Emem and her sister, who were new to the community, and who never knew anything about the law guiding the spring, decided to take a bath in the spring to relieve them of the exhaustion they have been through from their journey. As they took off their clothes to wash themselves close to the spring, an old woman passing by stopped and shouted at the top of her voice at them not to dare enter the river. She told them the story surrounding the river. She explained to them that inside the spring was a deep hole which led to the land of no return. Anyone who enters the spring to bath is usually dragged into the hole, never to be seen ever again. Emem thanked the old woman for being so kind to them. They moved on and got to Ibibio's house. Ibibio's daughter had a senior maid called Itoro. Itoro was a senior maid in Ibibio's daughter's house. Itoro, the senior maid, had heard of Emem's story, of how she was supposed to be married to Akpan, a wealthy man. Itoro, who was not happy to be a maid, thought of how good it would be for Emem to dragged away by the hole at the spring to the land of no return, and in turn she would take Emem's original place by marrying Akpan, Emem's former suitor. Emem, as at the time, had served as a maid for 3 years in Ibibio's daughter's house. Itoro wished that she would one day be given the opportunity of meeting Akpan so that she could take Emem's place. Akpan, on the other hand, never knew that Emem, his bride-to-be, had been sold into slavery by her greedy uncle. When Akpan asked about Emem when it was time for him to be given his bride, he was told that Emem had fallen sick and died. One day, Ibibio's daughter sent the 3 maids, Emem, her little sister and Itoro, to go to the spring to fetch water. Itoro, who knew the law guiding the spring, had, unknowing to the Emem and her little sister, mapped out a plan to get rid of Emem. She planned to push Emem into the spring. One day, Emem, Itoro and Emem's little sister went down to the spring to fetch water. As they got close to the water, the slave girl pushed her Emem into the spring and Emem disappeared at once. Emem's sister, on seeing what had just happened, began to cry bitterly. Itoro quickly faced the little girl and said, "Look, if you cry any more I will get rid of you at once, just as I did to your sister. I will throw your body into the hole after your sister." She then told the little girl that she must never mention what had happened to anyone, and particularly not to Akpan and Ibibio, their master's father, as her plan was to leave her master's house and marry Akpan. She further warned the little girl that if she ever told anyone what she had seen, she would be killed. Once, she then made the little girl to carry their load, and they proceeded on a journey to Akpan's house. When they arrived, Akpan, who was not expecting them, was very much surprised when she introduced herself as Emem. He was disappointed in Itoro's appearance, as she was not nearly as pretty and fine as he had expected her to be. But as he had not seen Emem for 7 years and having been told that she was dead, Akpan was not at all happy at the new development of events. The girl for whom he had paid such a large amount of dowry now looked different. But because of the love he has always had for Emem, he kept quiet. He then called all his companions together to come enjoy and feast with him for getting back his long-lost wife. When his people arrived, they were much astonished and said, "Is this the fine woman for whom you paid so much dowry, and of whom you have told us so much about?" Akpan, who did not know what to say, just kept quiet. Itoro, now Akpan's wife, became very cruel to Emem's little sister, and wanted to get rid of her by all means so that she will not reveal the secret of how Itoro killed her senior sister. Unknowing to Akpan, Emem beats the little girl almost every day, made her carry the largest water pot to the spring, and when the time came to cook food, Emem would sometimes go to the fire and get a burning piece of hot wood to burn the Emem's sister's hand. Akpan asked her why she treated the little girl in such a cruel way. She would reply Akpan that the girl was a slave that her father had bought for her. One day, Itoro sent the little girl to the spring to go fetch water with a heavy water pot as usual. On getting to the river, after filling the water pot with water, the pot was so heavy that she could not lift it up on her head by herself. This made her to remain a long time at the spring till night, fall asleep. She did not see anyone to help her. When night came, she began calling out aloud for her sister Emem to please come and help her out of her predicament so she won't be devoured by dangerous animals. When Emem heard her little sister's cry for help, she begged the water goddess to allow her to go and help the little girl out. The water goddess gave her the permission to go, but warned her to make sure she returns back to her immediately. When the little girl saw her sister, she begged her sister not to allow her return back to Itoro, the wicked slave girl. She then begged her sister to please allow her go with her into the hole to the land of no return. She told Emem how very badly she is being treated by her Itoro, the slave girl. Emem felt very sorry for all her little sister was going through. The then told her little sister, "Please have some patience and wait. The day of vengeance would arrive sooner than you think." The little girl, consoled, went back to Akpan's house with a heart full of joy as she had been able to see and talk to her sister, Emem. When she got to the house, Itoro asked her why she took that long getting water from the spring. The little girl gave no response as she did not know what to say. To punish her, Itoro took another stick from the fire and burnt the little girl as usual, this time very badly. She even refused to give her food, starving her for the rest of the day. This went on for some time until one day when the little girl was once again sent to the spring to get some water. On getting to the spring, after fetching her water instead of going home, she waited for everybody to leave because she wanted to talk to her sister, Emem. As soon as the whole place became quiet, she started crying out loudly, just the way she usually does whenever she wanted her sister to appear to her. She begged for her sister to come out and help her out. A hunter from Akpan's village was at that time still in the bush hunting. The king of noise he heard near the river made him to suspect that something was going. He then hid behind the bushes to check if he would see anything. Emem, knowing that there was a hunter from Akpan's town, hidden near the river watching what was going on, could not come out immediately to meet her sister. When Emem's sister's cry became unbearable, she begged the river goddess to please allow her to go and attend to her sister, but the river goddess refused so that Emem would not be seen by anyone. But as the little girl continued crying bitterly non-stop, Emem pleaded once again to the river goddess to please allow her go, assuring her to be very careful and that no one would see her. She promising to return back quickly after helping her sister out. As she emerged from the water, she looked very beautiful with the rays of the setting sun shining on her glistening body. She helped her little sister with her water pot, and then disappeared into the hole again. The hunter, who was still in hiding, saw all that happened and was amazed at what he had just seen. When he returned home, he told Akpan about the beautiful woman that he had seen come out of the water, and how she had helped the little girl staying with him with her big water pot. He also told Akpan that he was convinced that the girl he had seen at the spring was his Emem, his lost wife he had told him about, and that the water goddess must have taken her away when she fell into the river. The hunter told Akpan to follow him to the river the following day so he can see things by himself. Pan agreed. The following day, Akpan followed the hunter to the riverside to see things for himself. When Emem came out of the water to help her little sister as usual, Akpan recognized her at once. He knew immediately that was Emem, the girl he paid dowry on. They went back home, considering how he would be able to get her out of the power of the water goddess back to himself. After some consulting with some elders in the village, he was advised by some of his friends to go to an old woman in Imizara village. The old woman is known to appease the water goddess. After Akpan spoke to her, she told him what to bring to carry out the sacrifice. She asked him to bring her one slave, a white goat, a piece of white cloth, one white chicken, and a basket of eggs. When they get to the river, she would call out to the river goddess. When the great river goddess appears, she would take all those things to the water goddess and make a sacrifice to appease her on Emem's behalf. Then the day after the sacrifice was made, the water goddess would return the girl to the old woman, and she would then bring Emem back to Akpan. Akpan bought all the things he was required to bring and took them to the old woman. When the day for the sacrifice arrived, he went with his friend the hunter to witness how the old woman would carry out the sacrifice as required. The ram and all the other animals bound up together and led to the hole. The old woman called to the water goddess and thereafter cut the ram's throat with a sharp knife, and then pushed both the ram and all the other animals into the hole. He then did the same to the slave and the basket of eggs. All were thrown into the hole in the river. After this had been done, they all returned to their homes. The next morning at dawn the old woman went to the hole and found Emem standing at the side of the spring. The old woman told her not to be afraid, as she has come as a friend to take her to her husband. The old woman that night took Emem back to her own home and hid her in her room. She then sent a word to Akpan to come along with the hunter to her house, ensuring he took great care to make sure that the slave girl knew nothing about the matter. The following day, Akpan left the house secretly by the back door and arrived at the old woman's house. When Emem saw Akpan, she was very happy and delighted. She immediately asked for her little sister, narrating all that Itoro, the slave girl, had been doing to the girl. The old woman then instructed Akpan to send his friend, the hunter, to the spring to see if the little girl was there. On getting to the river, the hunter met her carrying her water pot to get the morning supply of water for the house. He brought her with him to the old woman's house. Emem, on seeing her sister, cried and embraced her. Emem told her sister to return to the house and do something that would annoy the slave girl. As soon as the slave woman wants to beat her, she should run as fast as she could back to the old woman's house. They knew with all certainty that the slave girl, in trying to beat the little girl, would follow her wherever she went and would meet them all inside the old woman's house. Itoro would then see Emem, who she believed she had killed. The little girl did as she was told. Immediately she got into the house. To anger the slave girl, she faced the slave girl and said, "Do you know that you are a very wicked woman? You have treated me very badly. I know you are only my sister's slave, and you will be properly punished for all you have done to me." She then ran as hard as she could, heading to the old woman's house. Immediately Itoro, the slave girl, heard what the little girl said. She got very angry and mad with rage. She seized a burning stick from the fire and ran after the girl. The little girl, who knew what their plan was, got to the old woman's house first and ran inside. The slave girl, following closely with the burning stick in her hand, got to the old woman's house as well. As soon as she arrived, Emem came out and confronted the slave girl, who at once recognized her. "I thought you were dead," she said. She was shocked and dumbfounded and could not move but stood still, looking dazed and bewildered. They all went back to Akpan's house that day. On arriving at Akpan's house, Akpan asked the slave girl why she pretended that she was Emem and why she had tried to kill Emem. Akpan sent for the villagers to come and witness what was going on. The slave girl, knowing that she had been exposed, could not defend herself. People gathered in front of Akpan's house. They came to celebrate the recovery and return of Akpan's wife. After the celebration, Akpan narrated to all what the slave woman had done to Emem. Emem, in order to revenge for the wickedness and bad treatment the slave girl had meted out to her, and her little sister decided to revenge. She treated the slave girl the same way as she had treated her little sister. She made her put her fingers in the fire, and burnt her with sticks. She also made her beat Fufu with her head in a hollowed-out tree, and after a time she was tied up to a tree and allowed to starve to death. Ever since that time, when a man marries a girl, he is always present when she comes out of the fatting room, and he then takes her home himself immediately, so that such evil things that had happened to Emem and her sister will not repeat itself again. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this intriguing story, please drop a like and comment on your favorite part of the video, and do well to subscribe to my channel, Folktale by Queen Mother. Don't forget to turn on your notification button so you get notified when we upload our next interesting story. Equally share this story and channel with your friends and family. It has not been easy getting here, but I really appreciate all of you who watched the story to the end. Do have a lovely day. Thank you.